Hello, this is Michael, and today's video is about 2006 through 2009 Kia Sedonas. I have several of these vans for my business. I had an issue with overheating. Of course, the AC doesn't work when it's overheating, but the AC worked fine when I was driving down the road. The electrical fans weren't running. On one of the vans, replaced the fan controller, which was bad. That resolved that issue, but these vans are several years old. At the time of this recording, it's 2022, so 2006. That plastic on those connectors is quite brittle, especially one of them. One coming from the engine side, from the power side. The thing just shattered in my hands when I tried to squeeze it and unplug it and plug it back in. So I was left with the metal blade, which connected to the fan controller. Fan spun, but in driving around, discovered that it was shaking loose or just not being solid. The fans didn't spin. Motor's overheated. Spent a lot of time trying to find a solution for this. I used some silicone to try to kind of hold it in place. I used something a little more aggressive than silicone, and it worked for a little while, but eventually just the driving and the shaking, it still came loose and still had the overheating problem. Went to AutoZone or O'Reilly's, and I bought some little blade connectors and replaced the factory connector, which really wasn't designed to grip by itself. Those gripped better, but still came loose. Still had the issue. Went to salvage yards and bought replacement connectors. They're just as brittle as the originals, so they shattered too. I was really getting frustrated because the vans work. I mean, all the vans that I have are over like 175. I've got one at 250,000 miles. These vans don't die as long as you keep up with these silly little problems. I talked to Kia. They don't sell the connector, they sell an entire wiring harness. Well, that's $1,000. Well, I'm not spending $1,000 on a 2006 Kia Sedona. I finally found a website, connectorexperts.com, and no, I'm not sponsored, but if you want to, I'd love it. And somehow I found it, even though like when I went to the actual spot on their website, it didn't say 2006 Kia Sedona, but the Google search took me there. So the description is kind of lacking, and I was really nervous, so I just bought one, replaced it a week or two on one of my other vans. Been working like a champ. I mean, when I replaced it, snapped in, it was perfect. Absolute match to the original. Today, I've got another van, has the same problem. Again, I've got like 4 of these vans, and several of these connectors, that connector on these different vans are all basically doing the same thing where they're breaking. It's a real simple fix, so I thought I would show you that. I'm going to put the link to the Connector Experts in the description. That way you guys can order this and you'll see how simple it is to replace. So let's get started. Our fan controller is basically right down here. I found that if we take the battery out, number one, we get rid of power. Number two, if we get the battery out of the way, we have room to work without having to take off all this top stuff. This is the connector from Connector Experts. I have 2 of them because, of course, I have multiple vans, so I bought 2 of them. What I like about these guys is you've got your connector. This is an exact match to the factory. Big deal. They also include heat shrink so that you can cover that original where you're splicing in, and then it's got a metal squeeze deal where you can squeeze the wires together. So heat shrink, of course you got to have something to melt this or shrink it. I happen to have cheap heat gun that I got off of Amazon. Don't know if a hair dryer would get hot enough to do it. You might try it. Worst case scenario, you don't need the heat shrink, you can just electrical tape it, but it's probably worth trying to shrink this on there so that you've got a good protection on it. And this is just a standard stick your stripped wire in and squeeze down on it. If you're doing this for the first time, you don't have to take the controller off. Just unplug the wire, and it's the one on the driver's side, lower side is what this is. There's basically 2 on the driver's side. It's going to be one on the bottom, smallest one. So far, I haven't had any issues with all the other connectors breaking on me. It's only this one. Okay, this is a 10. The bolts on the fan controller are also a 10. Taking your bracket off, don't take the bolts all the way off. There's just hooks underneath. So you just need to drop it low enough so that it'll unhook. Okay, you got your hooks. What we are working on here, driver's side, got 2 connectors. So it is the bottom connector here. You probably have to unplug this one to get a grip on the bottom one. You can take the battery plate out with these 4 screws to get a little bit more hand room. But realistically, if you just unplug this, you can get to the bottom one, pull that out. The wire will pull up. You can work with the wire up here where you can reach. I have found it's much easier to undo all the connectors before you take the controller off. Everything seems to come off pretty well. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 connectors. You've got 1 on the left, 1 on the bottom, 2 on the right, 2 on the driver's side. So 1 on the passenger side, 2 on the driver's side, 1 on the bottom. So the top one on the driver's side is really the main pain in the butt. That's the little cover I was talking about. It's got the little hook deals there, so I just pry it apart. and I can slide it back and rotate it up and, you know, lift it off. But getting the actual connector out is the true test. It's just no good grip on it. It's also really hard to tell exactly where the squeeze is. Ah, there we go. Now let's pull these up and get a hold of everything. I can probably work with it from here, but there's another little bolt right here that I think would give you a little more up if you need it. It's not solid core cable, it's a bunch of stranded wires. So I'm gonna have to really kind of get this down, kind of spin it and wrap it up a little bit. You need to get it to fit inside this. If you're gonna squeeze it before you have both pieces on, make sure you only squeeze on the lower half, or that half that's by the wire. If you squeeze this top one, you won't be able to get your new cable in. Now, if you can see, I'm using this pinch point here instead of here. You got more leverage here. I don't think you can get it with regular pliers. I definitely want to recommend channel locks or something like that. I'm just checking my depth to see how far in I need to go. You're not going to get all of the wire in the hole. Alright, so it was at this point in the video when I realized that I had crimped this onto the new and the old cable, but I didn't have my heat shrink on the wire. So make sure before you do your crimp that you slide this piece onto the wire on, you know, one side or the other. Basically tuck that up on the cable, then do your punch, your squeeze. That way, when you're done, you can slide this back over your crimp. Now you want to pull on it enough to make sure it's not going to just slide off, but I mean, obviously if you pull hard enough, it's going to come out. We're going to do the old trusty electrical tape. Now we have spliced in cable, new connector. All right, then you're going to put your 4 connectors back in. Everything should snap snug. Should feel good. Hear a good click. Love that click sound on that previously broken connector. Makes my heart happy. And now we put our battery back in and we test and make sure our fans spin. I'll go ahead and turn the air conditioner on when you're doing this, just to be sure that you got everything cranking. You'll hear the fan spin up. Alright, so that's going to wrap up the video on replacing the fan controller connector. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, please like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be posting more videos as I solve a new problem. So thank you.